Hello everybody. We're talking about swatching today. The big thing about swatching and the reason we want to make swatches with especially hand spun is to make sure your yarn correlates to your project. As our coworker Karen says, if you don't make a sample, then you might have a full project that is a sample. So you don't want your full project to be something that you can't use and you spent all this time on. So making a sample is the best way to go about making sure that doesn't happen. So you can make swatches in different forms. You can knit, you can weave, you can crochet, you can do whatever you use your yarn for. You want to make a gauge or a swatch. With weaving, you want to use make sure your yarn fits a certain dent size. With knitting, you want to use the right needle size to make sure that what you're producing is the right thing. Most patterns are going to give you a gauge, especially for knitting. They'll say X amount of stitches will be 4 inches, you know, and it does use a little bit of your yarn, but you can always rip that out and reuse that yarn again. So don't think that you can't do that. Same with weaving. Weaving's a little bit harder for making a sample. That's why we are going to show you how to make these little cardboard swatches, so you don't have to use up too much of your yarn to make a whole warp on a rigid heddle loom or, you know, on a floor loom. You can just test it in just a regular cardboard swatch. So yeah, that's why we are making samples today, and then it also will show your consistency in your hand spun, which is our goal with this whole spin along. So you'll see, especially with singles will show every imperfection you have, and it is frustrating, but it really is nice to know that you are going to be able to spin the size that you'll need for a project. I've learned a lot throughout starting to do this, and I think everyone will have a good time doing it. So we're excited. The things you'll need is your cardboard square. You'll need a ruler. This ruler is really handy specifically because it actually is an inch wide as well as it has the measurements, because you'll want something that's an inch wide so you can use it as your grid. So a ruler, scissors, a marker. This is a Sharpie pen. It's pretty helpful. It has a fine point, which might make it a little bit easier, but anything that you can use has a fine point that's going to write on your cardboard will be just fine. And then something you might not have, you might need to get, is packing tape. Now we have this fancy gun for it because we package a lot of boxes, but you don't need that at home. You can just use whatever. But it's kind of like the 2-inch thick packing tape. It's going to help you reinforce your loom and keep it so it'll last throughout the whole spin along. So let's get started. So we have our cardboard square here, and we each cardboard square has two different, well, there's 4 sides, but 2 different types of sides. The one side you can see the corrugated padding in there. The side you can't. And so when you're making your loom or your swatch loom, you want to cut your dents into the side that you can see these you know, little cardboard pieces. That'll be, it reinforces it better. It won't flop over. If you use this side, your dents are just a little too weak. Now we are going to do something to reinforce these sides as well, so the loom will last for all 3, you know, types of yarns that we're going to test out. So these are 6x6 squares, but what we're going to use, or we're going to make, is a 4x4 area. And to do that, you use your ruler that ideally is 1 inch wide, and I just lined it up. Let me do it so you can see. Drew a line. So you got 1 inch in, and you do that all the way around. So what we've done is created a 4x4 inch swatch. This is a 6-inch square. So this is 1 inch in from every side, which will give you a nice 4-inch swatch in the middle. Okay, next we're gonna make our 1-inch increments. And keep in mind, none of this is perfect. This is all for just testing your own hand spun out. You don't have to get too crazy with it. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is split one down the middle, because it'll make it easier for you to have your dents. They don't have to be exactly far apart. You know, each one doesn't have to be exactly the same distance. You can get as close as possible. That is fine. And so we want to go right in the middle. It's right there. So this is a 10 dent swatch that we're making. So this is one. So we're going to want 4 lines in between each, because this is, we're not going to cut on here. We're going to start with the first dent. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This is what where your 10th one will end. We'll do the same thing. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. The worst that'll happen if you have your dents too close to each other is that over time, that one little part of your loom might rip off. I did have that happen, and it's okay. Now we're ready to start cutting. Well, actually, before we start doing anything, I'm gonna trim the edges, so we don't have to wrap our yarn around so much of a cardboard piece. So. And you can, you know, mark it for yourself if you're not confident in just cutting a straight line. So this is 1 inch, so we want to just go in about a 1/2 inch. Over like that. And you only have to do this on one side. You do not have to do it on the other sides. Now, before we start cutting into our dents, to reinforce them while we're weaving, is where the packing tape comes in. So you want to get a piece of packing tape that is just the width of your swatch. You don't, so 6 inches about. You don't want to go over, because it'll make it, if it goes over like mine is like that, your yarn can get stuck on it and it'll just be annoying. So I'm just going to trim it a bit. And realistically, it really only needs to be a little bit more than 4 inches to cover the area. But so you're going to want to have, want to have it to go over the edge, so when you're cutting, it's, you know, keeps it sturdy, and so when you're weaving, it's sturdy as well. So I'm going to put it on with half of the tape going off the top, and then just flip it over, and that gives you a reinforced edge. Do the same thing on the other side. So now we are ready to start cutting. So you get your scissors. At first I did try to use a like a straight edge on a cutting board, but for some reason the scissors worked better. So it's up to you. You could try whatever way, safety first, but I found that the scissors worked best. So all we're doing is just cutting in to the area where we made our lines. If this is too much for you, you could trim it more. It really doesn't need to be much longer than the 1/2 inch, which is about what this is. So maybe even a 1/4 inch. If you cut past this line, it's not a big deal. Sometimes if you don't cut enough, it kind of, when you're warping, it could cause it to be uneven on the top. But it's all about what's going to happen in between here. You just want to make sure you have your threads organized in your warp. That's why we're doing this. Okay, so that's one side. I'm just going to do the same thing for the other side. Okay, so we're all set. We have our dents all cut. We have our tape on there to reinforce it. Now this is my hand spun single sport weight, and this is Polworth. So what I've been doing is I'll, you know, get it into the furthest dent on the bottom left, And because these are so fine, I mean, a lot of tapestry or hand looms, you can wrap it around and go front to back and not have to wrap all the way around. I didn't feel like these were strong enough to do it that way, so I just continually went around the whole cardboard square. It uses a little bit more yarn, but I mean, now we won't have to worry about the dents flopping around. Okay, so now we have our warp threads wrapped around. You should have 40 across for a 10 dent. That's 4 inches with 10 threads per inch. So I counted, we have 40. Now one thing that you want to do is kind of reinforce your ends so they don't start slipping out, so it doesn't make it harder for you to weave on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this over. First I'm going to cut this. You don't need too much extra thread at the end of it because we're going to tape this down. So I try and pull it as taut as I possibly can across, and then I'm going to get some tape. You want 2 pieces because you're going to be going across both sides. So you could pull this side. You want to make sure your tape piece is longer than your weaving. So you want to pull your extra thread a little as taut as you can, and then tape across your warp threads, specifically across the end, and that'll keep your end intact. Let me trim this so it's not over. You don't want any tape over the sides because it'll catch on your yarn and it'll be annoying. Okay. That's one side. Same. Pull this taut. And go straight across. Okay. And that will keep all your ends in place. It'll keep all of your, dent warp threads in place. And there you go. That's ready to go. Great. So now that you have your warp threads in place, we can start weaving. So this is a weaving needle. This is a 6-inch one. It is the metal one that we sell. You can use plastic. You could use a darning needle. It really doesn't matter. You just want something that has a big enough eye at the end so you can fit worsted weight yarn into it. Okay. And this is just basic plain weave, over under. The hard part with tapestry, if you've never done it before, is trying to keep it an even weave and not pull in too much on the sides. I still struggle with that, as you'll see when I show you my my swatch next. But we're just trying to see how your set lies. This is supposed to be pretty even, and how consistent your yarn has been. If you have chunky spots, sometimes this is hard but if you have spots that are a little bit light, a little bit thinner, a little bit chunkier, you'll notice it in your swatch. Okay. All the way across. Okay. And you can leave a little bit on the end. There you go. And you just go back and forth like that. I have a already done sample that I'll show you, and here it is. This is a 10 dent. As you can see, I started to pull in on the sides a little too much, so it's not totally even, but you can also see your inconsistencies and also where you're kind of been consistent. I struggled the most with this, with worsted weight, keeping it consistent. This is the sport weight, where I did have a little bit of spots that were thicker, but it's all about practice. So this one's done. You could hem stitch it. I think it would just be kind of silly to hem stitch it though, because this isn't like a finished product. We're just doing swatches. So what I've been doing is using packing tape and cutting the swatch off at the back between where you were taping, which I'll do here. So you had the tape that was already keeping it in place. I'm gonna take that, I took that off mine because it has the cardboard on it and it's kind of ick. So you could peel it going the opposite direction that your dents are, because if you go towards your dents, you might pull a thread out, and we want to try and keep it as organized as possible before we pull all of the threads out of your dent. So we got our tape off. We got our little loose ends here. Now, because the dents are close together, it's going to be, you want to make sure you put the tension, the same tension across all these threads. If you pull some out, it's going to just make your swatch look a little wonky. So you want to grab them all and really pull them out of there as quick as possible. If you go slow, you know, they're just going to look weird. It's like a band-aid. You just want to pull it right off. And now that you have one end off, it's easier to get this end, and you can use your woven side and do the same thing. Yank it. Because I didn't yank them all off at the same time, you can see that it caused a little bit of a tension issue here, but it's a swatch, it's not a big deal. Okay, so now what I do, just to keep it so you can use it for your records, because I didn't hem stitch it, we're going to tape the edges. Let me cut this too. You could trim it at this point too. Don't trim these yet because we're going to trim it with the tape on, but anything that's on the swatch you can just trim down. That's going to get in your way. You could weave it in if you really want to. You don't have to. So you have your swatch here. You want your threads all to be organized, going in the same direction, because we're going to lay tape on top of it now. Now you want your tape to actually be longer than your project, because we're going to wrap it around the back. So I kind of halved it. So half down the middle is, well, you know, half is going to be on your woven swatch and the other half is going to be on your ends. Straight across. Lift it all up at the same time. And just fold it around. Like that. And do the same thing for the other side. Now we have our threads intact, and what we can do to make it neater is just trim along the tape. Voila. Alright, well, thanks for joining. I'm Annie, and if you need to find any more information about the Woolery Spin Along, you can find the links below.